Hey everybody, how you doing? Trying to make an effort here, putting on some makeup and red lippy for you. Feels actually pretty good to get dressed up and try and just make an effort after taking the boys for a walk and having breakfast and bath time, and then it's like, okay, let me get dressed, let me get ready for a video. How are you doing? First of all, thank you so much for the feedback on my last video. If you haven't guessed, I'm whispering because the boys are resting. Well, Mali is resting. I've just put him down for a nap before I then came and did my makeup and everything. He tends to take pretty long naps in the morning, which is awesome. Huru is playing downstairs with his toys. I've told him, give me a minute, then I'll come. But yeah, thank you so much for the feedback. I don't know if it's elements of my vulnerability that made you connect with me, but it felt so good to do that video. I was in a moment of just wanting to open up, and I'm really happy I did, and I want to do that more. So encourage me, I'll encourage you to do the same, and I hope to have more sort of like heart-to-heart banter videos with you. And of course, thank you so much for the comments on my lovely boys Huru and Mali. They're a blessing, they're angels, as are all our children and all the children in the world. I also want to give a special shout out to This Is S, Sharon Mundia, on her video where she talks about my book. She's been so supportive. She's one of the people that I mentioned in the book, or that I profile. I did an interview with her for her show on NTV, and then she talked a little bit about it in her vlog. So thank you, Sharon, for just always being so real and honest and stylish and cool. Thank you. And then also to anybody who sent donations towards the care packages, thank you. Inua Dada is going to announce a pay bill soon. I know I said that in a previous video. I've been going back and forth in terms of just trying to pick the right avenue to use. So that should be ready super soon. And then you'll be able to begin giving whatever you have, because a lot of families still need a lot of donations. So I'll have that information for you soon. And then Sharon also mentioned something about wanting to join TikTok, and it's so weird when I saw that video and I thought to myself, I think I put my profile on TikTok a while back, but honestly, I don't know, man. Should I? Because, well, I feel a little too old for TikTok, but I kind of browsed it the other day and there were some interesting challenges, but I don't know that I've had psych or energy to want to do stuff like that, but I think I should. I think it's just healthy sometimes to just, I don't know, jump out of your comfort zone a little bit. So I'll see. My username on TikTok is actually official Janet Mbogwa. If you want to follow me, I've posted 3 or 4 videos sporadically over the last God knows how long. Haven't talked about it, was just playing around with the app. That's how I just tend to get into apps. I play around with them, don't really talk about them, and then when I feel like there's a sense of, oh, I'm comfortable doing this or I'm having fun with this, then I tell people, hey, join me. But yeah, why don't we get into 5 things on my mind? I feel like that was a prelude. Ooh, don't shake. And then these earrings are from an amazing lady that I met in Eldoret. There's a mall there, Rupa's Mall. She says she's on the ground floor. She's got beautiful jewelry. This top, I've had it for a while. This is from Human Hair Center. I love the color. It's a little different from what I usually do. It's a cinnamon bob. And then I just did super, super, super basic makeup with my Ruby Woo lippy and so my nails need help, as I'm sure most of our nails do, but it's all good. Why don't we jump into it? The first thing on my mind is cyberbullying. Surprise, surprise. Don't be surprised. I tend to speak out against cyberbullying. Now here's the thing. We are going to see it get a lot more vicious and condescending and personal, because people are frustrated, people have pent up anger, and unfortunately, the one space they can unleash that is on the timeline. The other space it can be unleashed, unfortunately, is in the home, and I'm going to come to that towards the end of this video when we talk a little bit about what's happening in a lot of people's homes. So the cyberbullying, and I want to raise a few names that jumped out where people were coming to their defense or trolling them, but I really want to highlight Aziad Nasenyo, who's behind the Utawezana sort of dance challenge, and she became this huge internet sensation, and she's done a lot of press, and she's talked about the fact that there was a lot of vitriol against her, and yet, you know, that's just a young lady having fun, you know, looks amazing doing it, and she got bashed. Yvonne Okwara, who's one of the most prolific news anchors in the country, and she was defending Brenda, one of the patients who came out of or recuperated from COVID-19, who was trolled relentlessly. And whether or not people feel like there was some strange circumstances around her story, leaking nudes and the revenge porn and all of that it's criminal and it's unnecessary. And then Yvonne comes to her defense, and then she gets attacked for it. And then I think those are the two I want to highlight. And just in terms of I know that Lonyangapuo, who's a governor, and a lot of other people have also faced cyberbullying, and so let me highlight that as well. But I think what you need to remember, if you're watching this and you have been part of it, you really need to address something a lot deeper within you, because you're reflecting something in you. And for the trolls and cyberbullies, it's an absolute reflection of a war within yourself that you have. And no matter how much you troll people, no matter how much you abuse them, no matter how much you spew hatred and vitriol against them, it's a reflection of a war within yourself. And I know many people are not familiar with having a moment to figure out why they are in such a space of toxicity and anger and frustration. And while I recognize everything that's happening in the world is so strange and forcing people to slow down and sit down, and they don't want to and they can't afford to, and there's a lot of necessary anger and frustration that comes with that, taking it out on somebody who's simply airing their views or doing their thing. I'm not talking about even taking it out on really annoying human beings like Trump, who you want to almost defend and say, yeah, you deserve it. But even then, I don't know how much it can change, right? If we're looking at people like, Donald Trump and all his horrible press briefings and policies that make no sense. We need to practice restraint so that you begin to appreciate the importance of trying to identify what is it in you that is spewing so much that you're constantly on your keyboard or your phone trying to tear somebody down, and it brings you joy, it brings you gratification. That is a war within yourself. And the only person who can fight it and win it is you. So it's fine. I know you'll continue doing it because, you feel like, what's the big deal? It's my space. I can do what I want to. I promise you there's no way it's going to come back in any good way to you. It can't. And you could very easily fall victim to it tomorrow. And so let's collectively be responsible in reporting cyberbullying, reporting cyberbullies. You know how to do it. Go onto, especially if it's on Twitter, because there's a lot of vitriol on Twitter, go onto the person's profile. On the top right corner, you'll see the 3 dots. Click on them. You should see the person's profile, and it should have a way that you can report. And once you report, it asks you a few more questions, and you've, at least you put your report across. So let's do that. Hold people accountable, report them. Do not be part of that parade, because you are then enabling cyberbullying, which can lead people to depression, anxiety, stress. In worst case scenario, people commit suicide because of cyberbullying. So let's not undermine how extremely toxic it is. And even in this time when we're all facing our days of anger and frustration, even if it's against world leaders who we want to condemn for their lack of leadership, remember to practice restraint even then. You can actually air your views in a way that says, this is wrong, without being abusive and rude and mean, because I feel like the moment you start, it opens a doorway for you to do it to anybody. So that's the first thing on my mind. Just reflect on the war within yourself and report cyberbullying. If you're a bully, figure out what's happening within you. And if you are watching it and not doing anything, you're an accomplice. And if you want to do something, report it. The second thing on my mind, which I may have alluded to just now, is safe houses and the rise of incidents of domestic violence in people's homes during quarantine. It is staggering how much it is on the rise, whether it's in Kenya, in the US, in parts of Asia. It has skyrocketed. And after speaking to an incredible lady I got to meet in London who talked about being on the front lines in the fight against Ebola, she was telling me, Janet, we are going to expect gender-based violence cases to be on the rise, teen pregnancy cases. She talked about the fact that sexual and reproductive health and rights are going to be deprioritized, therefore making women more susceptible to a lot of sexual reproductive health issues in future. That's what's really scary. The fight against Ebola, I know it's something that's not even that long ago, right? I mean, the fight against Ebola is as recent as it comes. And now these are people who are saying, given what we learned then, this is what we could do differently now. COVID-19 is affecting every single human being on the planet. It also should mean that there are different bodies and policymakers who are focusing on their areas of responsibility. We need gender-based violence to be addressed right now. We should not be treated as we'll figure it out when we're able to. It should be addressed as this is urgent. We need to open up safe houses as essential services. We need people to fund them. We need to help them be funded. We need to rescue women, children. In cases where there's men, they need to be rescued too. Unfortunately, a lot of the cases that are being reported is women who are victims of domestic violence, sometimes at really staggering, heartbreaking scales. So in terms of essential services, safe houses, rescue centers, orphanages, they need to be kept open. They need to be provided with some element of security, food, clothing. They need to be treated as an essential services, and they need to be supported holistically, in the sense that whoever is in there is able to get the right access to basic needs and access to treatment, meaning that even as the rescue centers are opened up as essential services, which we all need to make noise about so that it happens, let's also have some counselors making sure that they have the protective gear to go there and offer some kind of counseling, or have it on phone. I don't know. This is something that we really need to think about very, very intentionally, very thoroughly, very urgently. It needs to happen now. Otherwise, we run the risk of, once COVID-19 is under control, you kind of sit back and there's a whole other emergency that we then need to address, when it could have been addressed at the time that it had started to emerge as an emergency. So let's think about that, and let's do a lot more reading on the same. The third thing on my mind is loneliness. I had put out a call for some of you to send your videos. Thank you so much for sending in your videos to janetthejourney@gmail.com. I really appreciate the fact that you took your time to talk about how you're coping with it. So right now, whether or not you are in a home with somebody or some people, there is still an element of aloneness, but it's even worse if you're staying alone. You know, I'm not staying alone, and so there's a blessing in that sense. But even then, I think we've all grappled with a moment of feeling like I'm lost and lonely because I was supposed to be doing something else at this moment. I was supposed to be in somebody else's company at this moment. I was supposed to be reaching out to people and having people reach out to me at this moment. And it's hard. It's really hard. And I just want you to know that you are not alone in your aloneness. There are millions of people who are feeling it. What's important is that you recognize where that takes you and address it and treat it as priority, because loneliness can drive you into anxiety and depression. Or it could be, for some people, a passing phase and they get out of it. They exercise, they eat a healthy meal, they watch their favorite movie. For some people, it recurs, and especially at night when the world is asleep and it's just you and your thoughts. It can really cloud your judgment. It can make you imagine a scenario that is very dangerous and toxic for you. So please recognize that you are not alone, that you need to right now understand where it leads you to go. Research, because we're all on our phones, for those of us who are lucky enough to have them, or our laptops. Go in there and say, how do I cope with it? There's always basic coping tools. So let me talk about how I can cope when I'm lonely. I can always feel a sense of a cloud hovering over me when I'm about to go into that space of I'm feeling very alone, in the sense that I'm feeling like I'm dealing with something very personally, like we all are. I actually do some of the things I mentioned. I put on a song that uplifts me. And this is usually, say, when the boys are in bed. That's the time that I take to do a little bit of self-care, because they're sleeping and they sleep pretty early at about 8:30. Sometimes I sleep at that time. Other times I spend an hour and a half in self-care, which is making myself a cup of tea, reading a chapter or two of a book that I'm really enjoying, watching a video. It's okay if it's late at night and I'm on YouTube, it as well, or watching something on Netflix. It's funny, I've had Netflix here for so long, and for some reason I just don't really watch it. But now I'm trying to get into the habit of watching a movie or getting into a series at night, and it feels good. And I choose series or movies that I feel send a message that I resonate with, and not something that's just going to exacerbate how bad I'm feeling. So it's really, I just distract myself with things that are healthy. I grab a fruit, or I grab a nice cup of tea, listen to music. I just get myself out of it. And then I have this thing where I journal what I'm grateful for. I used to think it was cheesy. It is one of the most liberating things that I've embarked on, and it really helps me. So I journal something, I reflect on it, and then when I'm sleepy enough, I go to bed, and it usually makes me feel good and not alone. And of course, in the morning, the house is alive with a lot of noise. You're reminded you're not alone. Here's what some of you amazing folks had to say about how you cope with loneliness.
I think it's okay to feel lonely because of a situation that no one saw coming, to be honest. But then sometimes when you just sit with your feelings, you slowly go into this mode of sadness and self-judgment. So there's a couple of things that I've been doing to deal with the situation. One is having video calls with my friends. I think it just helps to get out of your own head and get into someone else's life and figure out what they're doing and how they're coping. It's great for that sense of community. The other thing I've been doing is working out. I just started because, to be honest, like when this situation started, I've been eating a lot and I've been inactive, and I wasn't feeling very motivated at first. So I signed up for this 30-day challenge thing, and I don't think it matters what kind of workout you're doing, as long as you're just getting your energy back again and you're getting the drive to also, focus on your other commitments.
What I've been doing to keep sane during this lockdown period is that I've been reading and watching a lot of motivational videos. For example, 5 Things on Her Mind by Janet Bogwa. Something else that I've been doing is I've been homeschooling my son, and I took up a challenge which was to potty train my son, and I can say that I was successful and that he is fully potty trained. Something else that I've been doing is that I picked up a new talent. I didn't know how to braid my own hair, but through YouTube, I watched and I learned. I know it's not perfect, but I'm proud of myself, and this is something that I plan to continue with even after lockdown. Guys, stay safe, stay positive, and know that these too shall pass. Cheers, guys. Bye.
I love it. And Ruth actually later told me that when I talked to her on email, she said she's in Beijing. She hasn't experienced the magnitude of racism and discrimination that we could see in Gwangju. So grateful for that. But I will come to that in a minute. Yaye, thank you. Thank you all of you who just shared your thoughts and views. I love that you're finding healthy ways to cope. More power to you. Everybody watching this, hold on to your power. We all have a power within us. Hold on to it. It's what we have right now. It's what will take us through this really trying time. Remember, you are not alone in your aloneness. Let that be, at least offer you some encouragement, and then find coping tools that work for you. The fourth thing on my mind is leadership in the time of COVID-19. And I want to split this into 2. I'll start with the good, and then I'll go to the bad. This pandemic has really shown the world what leadership is supposed to look like in a country, in a home, in society. And honestly, I am dedicating this to a lot of the world leaders who have addressed COVID-19 with empathy, with wisdom, with tact, with understanding. And I mentioned this on Twitter as well, because that's what this pandemic needs. It needs somebody to say, how are people going to eat? How are people going to pay their rent? How are people going to spend time with their children and make sure that they can afford to do that? This pandemic does not need a hardline stance, scolding, violence, condescension. There's a time and place to be strict, but this pandemic needs empathy. Leadership requires empathy. And so here's a shout out to the leaders who happen to be leading with tact and wisdom, and a lot of them happen to be women. Yeah, I'm pro-women, and I'm raising sons who will be pro-women. And we need to raise a society that is pro-everybody and not afraid to have powerful women in leadership. Now I'm going to go to a post that Women in Dev put up, where they kind of outlined why these women are leading. So it says, What do countries with the best coronavirus responses have in common? Women leaders. Germany. Infection numbers are far below other European countries, and they may be able to start loosening restrictions soon. Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, took it seriously from the beginning, and testing began immediately. Germany skipped phases of denial, anger, and disingenuousness that we've seen elsewhere. Taiwan is still reporting about 6 deaths or so and is sending 10 million face masks to the US and Europe. Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen, introduced 124 measures to block the spread early this year, managing to avoid the lockdowns that have become common elsewhere. Iceland. Iceland has the most aggressive testing regime anywhere in the world. The Prime Minister of Iceland is offering free coronavirus testing to all its citizens. Luckily, they can do so because their numbers are not as massive as other countries. In proportion to its population, the country has already screened 5 times as many people as South Korea. New Zealand. You all know how I feel about Jacinda Ardern. I know a lot of you feel the same way about this woman. As of mid-April, New Zealand has suffered 5 deaths. That was as of mid-April. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern imposed self-isolation and people entering New Zealand astonishingly early and banned foreigners entirely from entering soon after. Yeah, so we also have the mayors of Chicago in the US, Atlanta, who also happen to be women, who are being praised for taking serious measures. Now, yes, I know that the best leaders in the world who are responding to coronavirus best are women, but let's also give credit to people like Governor Cuomo of New York and Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. And I don't know, I kind of want to talk about Africa's response to COVID-19. I feel like I don't want to do that in full detail now. I feel like that's going to be its own commentary video. But the hardline stance, which I had talked about, strangely enough, with Museveni of Uganda and Kagame of Rwanda, maybe it's the fear that their citizens have of their law, the way they rule their land. They have also taken measures that seem to be cushioning their citizens in many ways from the spread of COVID-19. People who are failing in a very epic way include China, especially because in as much as Wuhan lifted the restrictions, just shame on a lot of Chinese officials who gave mandates to people to harass Africans. Shame on you. Shame on them. Shame on them. As an African, I just got such a feeling. You know, don't turn around and blame other people. And let's also not make this a blame game, because it's going to get ugly if we start pointing fingers for the rest of our lives of it started in your country and you're the one who spread it. You know, that's how you begin to just completely do away with a lot of the community building that people have been trying to do. But shame on the officials who okayed that. Thank you to the Nigerian officials who stood up for their citizens. I'm unhappy with the way the Kenyan officials did. I think they could have done more. I think it's important at a time like that, and as much as you need to play politics because you're in a relationship with this country, it's okay to say, I am upset about the videos I've seen and we're going to address it. It's okay to say that. Make people feel like you care. Make people feel like we're thinking about you and we're taking this as personally as you are. And so I know that since then, a lot of the officials have tried to give gifts and food to say sorry, but I feel like it says a lot about how they feel about Africans in China, how they treat Africans in Africa. This is going to be a conversation that I'm hoping is going to be interrogated. We need people at the leadership level to have a conversation about respect and about dignity in everybody's countries. We can't tolerate this kind of racism and BS and discrimination in our land, in other lands. It's wrong. And then people who are silent when this was happening, you're an accomplice. You're an accomplice in your silence. You know, the thing about speaking up is that the more of us that speak up, that's 100 and then thousands and then millions of voices. And a lot of the time, there's a reaction that comes from that. So don't be silent. Speaking up can change the situation. I believe because of the magnitude of coverage that story got, not on all stations, which is another sign of being an accomplice, but on Al Jazeera, they talked about it. There's a few stations that picked it up, a few YouTubers and content creators picked it up, and before we know it, they were apologizing. They apologized, but they didn't apologize. So an apology that isn't quite an apology, and it gives you the sense that this is something that's going to continue. People who are racist need an education. It's backward, it's stupid, it's chaotic. You're looking at people at the color of their skin and not at their capabilities, and that makes you an idiot. So figure out within yourself, expose yourself, educate yourself. You are in a world of digital media. Educate yourself on different landscapes and different people and different cultures, and do better. There is no excuse anymore. During and post-COVID, the amount of canceling people will get, I told you, I'm not promoting cancel culture. It's just going to happen. So be very careful about being quiet or being an accomplice, and also being a perpetrator. It is wrong. If I'm to end a little bit about the leadership and end at home in Kenya, it's been wishy-washy. I'm not going to lie, I've largely been disappointed. The responses have been slower than I would have hoped. I feel like we let things extend for a fair bit. Yes, I understand some counties are trying their best. Mombasa, Murang'a as examples. From what I'm seeing, unless kwa ground vitu ni different, please inform me. But from what we're seeing, there's a lot of measures to protect citizens, educate them, inform them, at least cushion them, which kudos to governors in Kenya who are doing that. Thank you for showing leadership. To police who are showing empathy and not exercising brutality, kudos to you. Even though you're doing your job, still, we will celebrate you. And all the other leaders, you're doing your job, but let's celebrate you. The CS Kagwe and the health ministry, hit and miss. I also think that there could be a lot more, a lot less impatient in answering questions. I know it's irritating and frustrating for them to be answering questions all the time, and also in ensuring that all medical practitioners are getting the necessary gear they need to fight this disease. That needs to be priority, and I can see it's happening. We also saw Kitui making face masks, kudos. So there are elements of, little steps towards trying to protect and cushion. I think what I really want to see more of is empathy, and maybe it's such a hard ask. This is the time for soft politics, not the time to talk about BBI and 2022. Shame on you if that's the game you're playing right now. Ain't nobody care. We're trying to survive, and there are people politicking, which is insane. Put the politicking aside, engage, actually open up your hearts to what your constituents are feeling and thinking. This is the time for soft politics, believe it or not. There is a time for soft politics, and this is it. So let's see, comment down below on your thoughts on the breakthroughs that you think we've had in Kenya and elsewhere around the world, on what you think we should be pushing and prioritizing in Kenya, elsewhere around the world, and how we can make that a reality. Please comment down below. I really want your thoughts on this, because this is an all of us issue, and all of us are under the leadership of these folks. So that's my view on that. The final thing on my mind is the stay home order, but it's not so much the repeating what's already been said so much, because staying home is one of the best ways to protect yourself. It's one of the best ways to keep you and your family safe. We understand that there's times people have to leave the home, and we talk about the fact that you need to wear your face mask, make sure you have your sanitizer, make sure you're keeping a social distance if you're going for a clinic run or a supermarket run. Just be cautious, exercise a lot of caution if you're leaving the house, and when you come back into the house, you dress into something else before you can engage with your family. And I'm going to leave the clip that I'm involved in, a campaign with Biz Fights Corona. Biz Fights Corona is the business community in Kenya coming together to address COVID-19 and raise funds and awareness towards addressing the issue as well. People like Miriam Sidibe, who's a great friend and mentor, folks at Unilever and so many other organizations, private sector, are doing amazing work in this fight. So thank you so much to the organizations involved, and for calling on me to do one of the public service announcements, which I will end this video with. It's my responsibility, I feel, to keep emphasizing this. But this last point is for people who are holding parties, going to pubs, going to bars. I don't know what to tell you, other than what is the restraint that you cannot practice. Don't you think we all want to go for parties? I do. I miss a good party. I miss a good night of clubbing. I haven't clubbed in a very long time. I have a feeling that when things are under control with COVID-19, I'm going to go for a hell of a clubbing night. I will, probably, shamelessly. But I'll wait it out, because that's a wise thing to do right now. We're all making sacrifices. And honestly, it says a lot about you if you don't have enough restraint to hold off on your house party and on your drinking in the pub and in the bar and going to petrol stations or parking lots and gathering in large numbers. You need to really contain yourself until we begin to see the curve flatten. It is the best thing we can do for everybody. The more you're out there, the more you keep us in our homes. And that's frustrating for all of us. We also want to get out there. I leave when I absolutely have to, and I hate it. It's so much work, by the way. When you have to leave and come back, it's just more work than staying home. Because then you leave, you're in protective gear, you're paranoid, you're nervous. When you come back, the kids want to run to you, you're like, wait. You have to change in the Adobe. Come, wash your hands, get clean, and then go hug them. Ni kazi mingi sana. So stay the F home. Stay the F home. Samuel L. Jackson's video, epic. Stay home. The more you're out there, the longer we're left in our homes. And it's frustrating, and it'll be a vicious cycle. You're also putting yourself at risk by engaging people in large crowds and numbers when you don't have to. When you're out in large numbers, you're putting yourself and others at risk. So that's my emphasis on point number 5. Wash your hands. Stay home unless you absolutely have to leave. And if you do, wear a mask. Absolutely having to leave is not going to the pub or the bar. Keep a social distance and change when you get home. I'm going to leave you with that clip right now. Thank you again. Let me know what else you want me to talk about in 5 Things on My Mind. It's a segment I absolutely love to do, and I love to engage you on it. And remember, I'll always be asking you to send in your videos on certain topics that I'll be covering. But let me comment down below on what else that you want me to cover on 5 Things on My Mind. I'm hoping to be doing it at least weekly, God willing. And if not, then I'll be trying to, if I'm not able to upload a weekly YouTube video, then I can do it on Instagram. But I love doing it on YouTube. And I love you guys and I appreciate you. And I just want to send you love and light and let you know that we're going to get through this. I really believe we will. Then we'll have a stronger vision of who we are. All right, let me go. We'll see you soon. Bye. Hello, here are some tips to keep in mind as we continue the fight against coronavirus. Number 1, wash your hands with soap and running water frequently and thoroughly for at least 20 seconds. Do the same for your children as well. Make sure they're also practicing hand washing with soap. Rule number 2, please stay home. Staying home protects you, it protects your loved ones, it protects everyone else around you. Rule number 3, if you have to leave the house, please wear a mask. Even for your children, they also ought to have masks if you're leaving the house together. And make sure that when you're out in public, you maintain a social distance of at least 1.5 meters from the person next to you. And rule number 4, when you do return home, make sure that you change out of the clothes that you're in. Wash your hands, and then you can move around and interact with your loved ones and move around the house as well. Remember, each of us has a role and responsibility in fighting coronavirus. Pamoja tukomeshe corona.